Well, hi everybody. It's Joe Chaffee on the Sunday morning Joe and Joe Weather Show, to which Joe is joining right this second. Do we have to go to the sandbox or something?
No, I got involved with another correspondence and just started typing away, and all of a sudden I said, "Oh my God, it's
It's
11:02."
11:02 for God's sake on this Sunday. I had a just want a minor apology about yesterday because I know I said on Friday we'd come on. I Yesterday was one of those days where it starts with one thing going wrong and it just basically cascades down. I had a series of technical mishaps, and I wound up sitting on the computer virtually most of yesterday afternoon up until about 9 or 10 o'clock last night when I finally got uh, all these different issues resolved on my website, on the weather app, on my phone, and it was on and on and on. But everything seems to be working okay now for the most part. I got a couple of minor glitches that I still have to take care of. So I was under a boilerplate yesterday with Mr. Rayo with the heavy thunderstorms to my southwest, to my southeast, to my northeast, and to my northwest. And I think if I saw 5 drops of rain here, I think I saw 5 drops of rain here. Heard a little bit of thunder from each one of the corners and missed it all.
Well, we had no thunder, no
Hmm.
lightning, but a heck of a lot of rain. We had, in fact, I believe the last I looked before midnight last night was 0.82,
Not
and
too not too shabby
a lot of
considering
that came down
how
very
dry.
hard. Yeah, yeah. So we did get. My wife is very happy. We did get the moisture that she craved so much. And who knows? We may not be done. We might get a little bit more later today, perhaps.
I'm sorry, it's a Sunday morning. I should like clear my head, and I'm going to do that right now. Okay, so the big storms across central New Jersey yesterday, and they seem to line up probably along or just south of Route 78 because there were cells that were sort of marching along there from Allentown east. Then there was a little complex that moved through North Jersey that moved southeast, but the severe weather didn't exactly play out according to how the SPC was looking at it in general from the onset. But that's sometimes that happens, and it was another example too of how you look at these short range weather models and how they sort of envision what they think the radar is supposed to look like, and it never
Right.
seems to come out right on any of them. Each seems to have a facet of one piece that's correct, and you just kind of try to gravitate to the one that you think might have the best look that makes the most sense. But it's still pretty frustrating when it comes to these storms.
And I won't say it's like a defeatist attitude, but when you carefully look at the radar, and then you go to a model like the HRRR or the NAM 3 kilometer and try to line it up and see it doesn't line up at
At
all.
all,
You
it
kind of
hardly
like,
ever does.
yeah, and your whole emotions or thoughts just sag and say, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to use this, or you don't know
I've
what to do?
always thought the best approach is acknowledge the risk. Clearly you can look at the upper air and you can look at the dew points and everything else, and figure out that there's risk here. Okay. But as far as trying to, and then I just kind of I look at all the short range models and decide, okay, which one to me makes the most sense, which one has the best look to it. And
Yeah.
by the way, I just so you know, I'm trying to bring up some maps. And of course, you know what just happened. Like I said before, when one thing cascades wrong, my my not that my screen is frozen, but my Google Chrome has conked out on me for some reason. Oh, I'm going to try to figure this out. Let's see. Uh, can I get this? I wanted to bring up SPC's risk area for today, and it's not having it. All right, so we're going to have to clean up here. So anyway, let's talk about that. Well, we'll do two things at once here. Um, let's uh, let's talk about SPC and what they're up to today, because they seem to the risk map from yesterday morning to today. It's two totally different. It looks like three different worlds, because we went from this sort of wholesale marginal risk, up and down the East Coast, to uh, something entirely different. And now, hold on, where did everybody go?
I don't know. Where did they go?
Okay, well, no, that's me. I'm assuming we're still streaming live. This everything is. Oh boy, what's happening here?
It's technology, Joe.
I seriously, Joe, it's hysterical. Hang on, okay, here we go. I've lost everything on my screen. This is a fun Sunday. This is what I've been dealing with. There we are. Okay, now I think I may just have things working here again. All right, so hang on, everybody.
Who turned out the lights?
Oh, yeah, this is just ridiculous here. All right, I got to do this really carefully. Host attendee. All right, so let me just open up a new Google Chrome and see what happens.
You know what I could have done while all this was happening?
Uh,
It would have been a copyright issue, but I could have played the Burt Camford song that Sandy Becker used, um, and you hear a voice over it saying, "We're having technical difficulties. Please stand by."
yes, we are having technical difficulties. Please stand by. All right, so here's SPCs. I got it on this screen anyway, so let's bring this up. So we went from a marginal risk up and down the East Coast to now, they look like they've expanded it again, Joe. They just expanded the slight risk into northern New Jersey, west
Right.
of New York City, up until this morning had been east, and all of Long Island, the lower and middle Hudson Valley, and even up into the upper Hudson Valley, and virtually all of southern and central New England under a slight risk of severe weather, and marginal from Maine all the way down into the Carolinas. You also have slight risk in parts of North and South Carolina. There's some big boomers in parts of Kentucky right now, moving southeastward, and that also covers eastern Tennessee. But
Do you ever, Joe? I know you always look at the categorical outlooks, but do you ever look at the one at the very bottom, the thunderstorm outlook that gives you the percentage chance in 4 hour increments? Now they have
I I did not. I usually don't.
all right, for my zone, but for New York and Long Island and for most of New Jersey, there's a 10% risk of thunderstorm activity from noontime to 4 p.m. Where I live, and for Northwest Jersey and points north, there's a 40% chance. They put us in that blue zone,
Hmm.
and 40% for just about everybody between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. And then they drop everything back to 10% after 8 p.m., which tells me that basically they're thinking that there's going to be a growing probability or possibility of storms in the tri-state area during this afternoon, pretty much ending after 8 o'clock tonight. And again, we're back in the slight zone, so who's to say what? But unlike yesterday, where we were stuck in the schmutz and the low clouds for a good part of the day, which I think held down the probability of
Oh,
severe
clearly,
weather.
clearly, the
We
warm
are
front never got. That was the main thing. The warm front had just basically decided not to punch through the
right,
way it should have.
right. And so now today, with all that sun and temperatures are warming up, I think I saw somebody on the chat board say we're up to like 82 degrees already, 84.
Hmm.
Marble racers? Marble Racers says it's already 84 in northern New Jersey. So I think we're on the way
I
with,
can I can tell you this because I went out walking before the show this morning. It was like a steam bath outside. I mean, the dew points out here. There's hardly a breath of wind, definitely in the 80s already, and I'm just by feeling it, I'm thinking the dew points are in the mid to upper 60s. This is a day, the upper trough, the way that's set up, and we're going to take a look at that. The upper trough, the way it's set up, is a little bit further to the east and more oriented north-south today, and I think that is important because it shifts the severe thunderstorm risk zone a little bit further to the east. I've got the new GFS or at least I'm attempting to. No, not the new GFS. I'm sorry, it doesn't start for another 20 minutes. The last run of the GFS, I should say. And if you take a look at what's happening up in northern New England and in eastern Canada today, this upper low is basically dropping almost southward or even slightly west of due south across the St. Lawrence River and heading into northern New England. So you do have a short wave, Joe. There's a short wave trough here that is accessed from where the upper low is centered, and I'm drawing it on the map, southwestward to about Lake Huron. That is swinging eastward, and that is, I think, that's a an important trigger mechanism here for this afternoon. At 2 o'clock, you've got a trough axis that's literally sitting, over right down the Hudson River or just west of the Hudson River as it swings around. So this is why you see your risk zone your risk zone is going to be east of the trough axis, and that's why we're seeing the risk areas as high as we are from SPC being indicated over southern New England back to about New York City, northern New Jersey, and then going north and northeast from there.
Yeah, can you? I'm so happy that it's not going to snow today. Can you imagine trying to shovel snow in this heat and humidity?
What makes you say that? I mean, what made you think about snow on a day like today?
Because Scott Briller on the chat board said no snow today, Chuck. LOL.
Oh, right, for Chuck, yes. Although, just on that same map, that same 500 map I have up, take a look at in the west, in eastern Oregon. There is a wrapped up deep cold upper low
I
that
didn't think it would be possible to get something like that this late in the season.
I
Look
mean,
at
this
that.
is a powerhouse. It's one, two, three, four contours cut off, and it just sits there. And I'm telling you, there's probably going to be in some of the elevations. I mean, it's mostly elevations when you go out at that part of the country, obviously, but some of the higher elevations are going to see just some snow out of this, and we're
Yeah.
almost into July. There's been this continuous these deep lows coming into the Northwest have been pretty much nonstop for the last month. I thought by now it would have relaxed, but it kind of uh, you've got a trough in the east with a wrapped up with a weaker upper low in New England, deep trough in the west, and of course you wind up with a ridge right in the middle, and this is going to be the story I think all this week. The other thing, Joe, is looking at stuff from last night, and in terms of the guidance, the upper low in New England is going to be, I think, a little stronger and exert its influence a little bit further south. So I was thinking that we may have to deal with instability showers and maybe some isolated thunderstorms over the next few days while we're under the influence of this, because there'll be little ripples rotating around every day.
Right. Right. And that's basically in the synopses of all the National Weather Service offices. They have been saying weak systems moving through for much of this upcoming week because they really don't know how to put it in the correct terminology
Yeah,
or
it's a little hard to describe.
yeah.
It really is.
I mean, it's hard to, and you don't want to get too technical because the average person doesn't really understand what an upper level trough is.
Now, except for our audience, of course, which
Yes,
they do,
yes.
for sure, because we've surrounded with them with that awful language for how long now?
I remember listening on shortwave radio at noontime each day. The New York Marine operator. These were the operators who used to connect you. You'd be on your boat and you'd go on the radio and you'd have the operator connect you. She would be the one with the telephone. She'd call somebody up. Anyway, at noontime every day, they used to do a weather synopsis for about 5 or 10 minutes. They'd give
Hmm.
the latest marine for, and I always used to the person who would be reading the forecast and a low pressure trough,
Yes,
trough.
I always
Anyway,
used to get upset when you over a course of days they'd be talking about a storm, or a storm system. And Gordon Barnes used to do this all the time. So he would say it was a storm system heading our way from the Gulf coastal states on for Thursday, and by the time you get to like the day before, it goes from being a coastal storm, some sort of storm from the Gulf Coast states to a frontal zone. And I'm like, no, you've
and
just weakened it. No. By the way,
But I don't
got
mean to don't mean to get in political here, but now that we the Dixie Chicks now have dropped the word Dixie because they say it's politically incorrect.
I so
If I
but chicks but isn't chicks politically incorrect? And why are we going on this on this tangent?
No, we're going on this way. If you and I were still doing the weather on television and we were pointing out on the weather map, we'd say something like, and a storm system from the Dixie states, which I always used to say, especially in the wintertime for a
Hmm.
potential winter storm. I'd say, well, we've got cold air locked in over the Northeast. Now we'll watch this storm over the Dixie states. Now, am I allowed to say that anymore, or do I have to change it to something?
Well, I mean, I've never, I'm thinking even when I worked, I worked in New Orleans for 3 years back in the mid 1980s. I don't think it ever occurred to me to even use that. I know sometimes people have always referred to the Mason Dixon line.
Right.
I've heard that.
Or as Yosemite Sam said in one cartoon, the Macy Dixon line.
The Macy Dixon.
You remember
Yes,
that?
yes, yes,
When he still thought that the Civil War was going on.
yes.
Gotta burn my boots. They touched Yankee soil.
Oh God. Well,
Another cartoon which we'll never see on broadcast television again.
well, you know what? You can always see it, watch it at home on get it on DVD there, or it'll be
Yeah,
somewhere on the internet, so it doesn't matter.
right.
Speaking of which, just kind of looking at the radar right now, and I mentioned before about this patch of heavy weather that's moving through Kentucky and into West Virginia, southern Ohio. Also seeing some stuff building up north of I-90 in upstate New York and into parts of Vermont and New Hampshire, Massachusetts. It's all scattered though. There's nothing yet as of midday, as of I'm sorry, at 11:20 Eastern Time AM. Nothing close by in our neck of the woods, but I'm suspecting that's going to change. And just checking out the radars this morning, Joe, it's pretty quiet in the southeastern Florida, a little scattered activity in Texas, Idaho, Wyoming, up into Montana, parts of Utah, seeing some action there, and also seeing a little bit of action in southeastern Iowa, northeastern Missouri. So radar's not that busy yet, except in the areas I've mentioned, but it will be getting busy a bit later on.
I see that on the HRRR, the latest one, the 14Z. Generally for the tri-state area, they've got some activity between about 3 and 9 o'clock this afternoon and early this evening.
I'm
But of
bringing it.
course,
I'm bringing it up right now.
I didn't even have to look at the HRRR because this is your typical 3 to 9 or 3 to 10 pattern where if you're going to expect anything diurnally, that's usually the time frame to look is about 3 o'clock to 10 o'clock for its
Yeah, it's
time.
a little weird setup here though, because I want to before we even look at this, let's bring up. I want to bring up the WPC's. Where's that surface map? Hold on a second. WPC. This should be it.
I
So
see. I see that the
this is the 12Z map,
right.
and we're in a warm sector here, a pretty solid warm sector. There's one low up in on the Canadian side of north central New York, with a trailing cold front running into to eastern Lake Ontario, northwest PA, northern Ohio. The warm front, as they analyzed it, is north of Plattsburgh, across into northern Vermont, that kind of drops southward into central New Hampshire and then moves out and becomes stationary in the Gulf of Maine. There's also the way they've got the isobar drawn. There's a weak little low that is sitting. I think if you look up, Joe, you'll probably could see the bottom of the L over your house, the way they have it plotted on the map. Um, but we've got this we've got a warm sector that we're in today, and the dew points on the south side, we're talking about dew points that are already up in the mid and upper 60s. uh, but it's a bit strange because this front is it's weak. There's not a whole lot. There's not a huge difference between one side and the other in terms of the temperatures of the dew points. It's a weak front, and yet at the same time, the steaminess of the air, I think, plus the fact that you've got this upper trough with the upper low, is going to be supportive. I think you're probably going to wind up seeing a few big boomers somewhere later today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, obviously that's going to be the case. I noticed that the 3 kilometer NAM places some rather significant, albeit very, very, uh, tight, localized activity over the immediate New York area by
Yeah.
23Z or 7 o'clock tonight. Now, I for one hope I don't lose power because I don't want to miss Lassie tonight. But anyway,
Lassie.
yeah, on Channel 2 at 7 o'clock. Am I looking too far back in time here?
Listen, you're not being funny. They may actually have to do that if they don't start producing new shows soon.
Well, they wouldn't do that now because 60 Minutes is on at 7 o'clock, and that's
Oh,
virtually their number one show. So, want to see what Mike Wallace and Harry Reasoner have to say
yeah.
tonight.
Okay, very good. You're really digging
Now, I'm
deep.
really diving back in
Yeah,
time,
you're
right?
digging deep now.
Yeah.
Uh, all right, so let's move. Let's go forward for the rest of this week because there was a couple of things that I noticed happening. The models the last bunch of days have been so very volatile from what the outlook is going to be going into the rest of this week and this weekend. We would first thought back days and days ago that the weekend was going to be hot and humid. Then we see this upper low exerting its influence, and as I'm running through the GFS, you notice that right into Thursday, the basic premise of what the upper air looks like hardly changes. Trough in the east, trough in the west, ridge in the middle, and then finally the upper low opens up and gets ejected. But there's another short wave from a low east of Newfoundland that swings down. So all of a sudden we've got this backdoor front
Right.
that moves through. But even though Joe it moves through, the upper low east of Newfoundland pulls out enough to the east so that we actually get back into an upper high ridge position over the weekend. And yet, while that's going on, there seems to be a little bit of renegade energy that gets left behind in parts of Kentucky and Tennessee, and the European picked up on this too. So I'm confused as honestly I am really confused as to how this all what this all plays out to when we get to the end of this coming week. I think the first part of the week is fairly straightforward with the upper low in the east the way it is and just kind of spinning around. It's going to mean, morning sun, developing clouds, some scattered showers and thunderstorms, especially as you go up north and go northeast into New England. Less so as you go down into Maryland and Virginia. Then you have the frontal boundary that's down there. That's a different story. Then once the upper low pulls out, you got this back door, and I got the GFS up. If you look at the upper right, you can actually see the back door front dropping southward, and high pressure builds in for Friday into Saturday. But then it drops the high east of Nova Scotia, and then you've got this renegade trough in the Tennessee Valley that starts to lift up and bring some showers up the coast on Sunday. I don't know how. Honestly, after Thursday, I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen.
Sometimes all you need is just one little isobar to push a backdoor front at this time of the year to the south, and then the question is, what are we going to get as the front passes on through? Does it come through quietly, or do we get, a line of showers and storms? I think a lot of things will have to fall into place in terms of how hot it's going to get on Friday.
Back
How
doors usually don't are not big storm producers here.
well, yeah, that's
It
true.
depends, but usually they aren't.
A couple of times I could recall backdoor fronts that had produced some rather significant weather with their passage. Although you're absolutely right, normally they do come through more very quietly, and you get that shift in the wind to northeast. You say, "Oh, what happened?"
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this one, with the absence of any kind of really deep shortwave that's overhead, if we had a shortwave trough that was accessed, say, all the way back to Lake Huron and swinging southward from an upper low to the northeast, then I would say, okay, sure, we probably could see some storm development. But we're just really kind of on the edge of that shortwave from the upper low that's out east of Newfoundland. So I'm thinking this one is probably going to be one of those where it's the wind shift. You get the wind shift, and you're like, what happened? That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah,
It's just afterward because the high quickly settles over southeastern New England, you've got this renegade trough by Friday night, Saturday morning that's back in Kentucky and Tennessee that actually produces some showers and thunderstorms in the southeast and mid-Atlantic states on Saturday. We're kind of on the edge of that. And then on Sunday, it gets a little more robust. It tries to lift up to the northeast, but never seems to quite get there. It looks like a little wave goes out underneath us. I'm just really confused in terms of how this has gone from one extreme to the other in terms of the what the overall atmospheric profile is going to be.
Yeah.
And I can see I've just stunned you to silence too.
No, I'm just reading here the on the chat board looking for stuff. Scott, of course, with his Briller Jeopardy for the chat board now, and
Hmm.
he says no Google to all members on the chat board. Work as a team. There are
Yes.
nine sports teams whose last name does not end in S. NBA, MLB, NFL, NHL. You have 64 seconds. Good luck.
Six, 64, he says.
Yes.
All right, let's. It's a Sunday. I don't want to. I usually, with the absence of anything major going on, I just kind of let's move this along. I want to take a look just real quick at the tropics, and the Hurricane Center is mentioning a system out halfway in the tropical Atlantic. Uh, uh, about well, not quite halfway. I'm sorry, I take it back. It's only well, they're saying several hundred miles west southwest of the Cape Verde Islands. It's a little bit more than 700 miles west southwest of the Cape Verde Islands. And that's moving west northwest at 15 to 20. Some slow development over the next 2 to 3 days.
Midway between the Cape Verde Islands and what the Windward Islands
I
or the
guess.
whatever.
They also highlight on their 5 day the area of clouds, low pressure developing off the southeast U.S. Later this week and moving northeastward. 20% chance of it developing there, and they've got the area highlighted in the coastal waters. And of course, we just had Dolly in this zone, and it's kind of doing. We sort of have we have a not an exact rep. There's some similarities in the setup with Dolly. There are a lot of things that are different, but there are enough similarities to remember things like to rhyme. So we've already had a couple form out there, so why not another one? And just a real quick view of the Pacific, which we lost Boris. Boris came and went very quickly.
Yeah.
But a little area off the coast of Mexico, not expected to do very much there. And yeah, Boris came and went. I mentioned the other day the fact that the Pacific can't even seem to get something going on an even minimal basis is probably a fairly uh, strong sign that the Atlantic is going to have a busy hurricane season, assuming, and I want to make this clear, assuming that what's going on now is what we will be having down the road. That is a big assumption to make, but all things being equal, it is. It would suggest that we would have some, busy season. Looking at the loop, by the way, you actually can see the wave. It's not a half bad looking wave here, Joe, that's out there on the satellite moving west northwestward. There's a nice little arc to it in terms of the cloud structure. It looks, we talked the other day about how you had that all that convection just north of the equator, and you just have to kind of wait for it to start pushing up further north toward 10 degrees north, and it seems like a little one wave has at least punched through that 10 degrees north latitude, and it's moving along to the west northwest. Also, trying to pay attention. Doesn't seem to be as much dust coming off the African coast like we saw last week. Uh, dust. We could see the dust on the satellite over the Caribbean, the Eastern Caribbean, and just to the east of the Leeward and Windward Islands. The dust in the Gulf of Mexico has diminished considerably from that first batch that came through earlier this week. So it looks like the Saharan dust situation, at least for at the moment anyway, seems to have relaxed somewhat.
Yeah, and the various National Weather Service offices across both North and South Carolina issuing all kinds of air quality alerts and advisories yesterday in light of the Saharan dust, just literally covering both states. And
Yeah,
must be interesting to be down there right now to experience that.
yeah, it puts a lot of haze in the air, and if you have asthma, that definitely is a big problem. All right, so let's see if we can get. Let me get. Let me bring up my questions for you on Briller Jeopardy, or as I sometimes like to call it, Les Jeopardy de Brillard, and for our French viewers, just so that we're clear. Uh, Hang on a second.
Do we have French viewers? I guess we do.
We have viewers from every corner of the globe, Joe. Even especially the flat earthers. They're watching from every corner of the globe, standing right on the edge, ready to take a jump. Oh God, where are? See, now this is why I have to speak quietly. You got to be kidding me, really? Now here I am. I'm pulling up,
I'm
trying to
looking
pull
for,
up the best.
I'm looking for my question.
He's just. Oh, here he is. Okay.
It always
Okay.
disappears.
So, let's go back to.
Oh, here it is.
I have
Good.
mine. So, question one for you. Are you ready? In Oman, okay?
Oman.
In Oman, the nation of Oman or the kingdom of Oman. I don't know how do you which is right. In June 2017, they recorded the highest temperature ever at night.
All right. Well,
And
now
what what was that temperature?
this begs the question now, could it possibly have been a triple digit temperature?
I will admit that it's I will say as we would say on What's My Line, if that's what we're going to play. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I will say 103.
Okay, 111.
111 at night?
Yes.
111.
Isn't that
Wow.
that's disgusting?
That was
Um,
that was Ralph Cramden's temperature that when Norton
right, martyrial monochromia, sure.
right
In July 2003, they recorded the highest dew point in the world. What was that?
in Oman?
Mm-hmm.
Well, geez, if the overnight temperature was 111, could the dew point be not too far behind? I'll say 99.
95.
95.
I mean, does that like if you're standing out with a dew point of 95 and a temperature of say 90 of 96, let's just for laughs. So the humidity is almost 100% with a dew point of 95. I mean, are you literally walking through water?
Yeah,
I mean, is that how it feels that you're like you're walking virtually walking through water?
I don't
How do
under
you breathe through it with a dew point of 95? I can't even fathom that.
I I can't even fathom that as well. I don't know.
Okay, so the third and most important question, okay, is how much rice did Ricky Ricardo cook in the episode Job Switching? And I knew the answer to this, by
He
the
put
way.
the whole box in, didn't he?
Yes, but how much did he put
How
in
much did he
terms
put
of
in?
weight?
A pound? No, 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 no. I think it was 4 pounds.
Right,
One
four
pound.
pounds. It was 1 pound per person because, as Fred said, people really like that stuff.
And that has to be the oldest TV gimmick because not only did I Love Lucy use it, but also the Honeymooners used it,
Yep,
the Flintstones used it.
yep,
In fact, I remember in the Honeymooner episode, Norton said, "Well, that's the wildest rice I've ever seen."
yes. Well, and it also begs the question. We're and I discovered this. So You know the turkey sandwich, and was it? I'm trying to remember which bit. I think it was the turkey sandwich cup of coffee bit that Abbott and Costello do.
Right?
Okay, but I happened to discover not too many years ago. There's a Laurel and Hardy version that Laurel and Hardy did back in the early 30s.
Really?
Yeah, but the thing is, these were all old vaudeville routines that a number of them did. And each these comedy teams that did them differently. The Rice thing, now that I having seen it as you said, it's on Lucy, it's on and Lucy chronologically. If those are the three times I Love Lucy did it first of those three. They did it in the
Right.
early 50s,
Right.
and then the Honeymooners in the mid 50s, and the Flintstones in the 60s. The
Right.
thing is, you have to go back and also look at the kinescopes of some of these shows, like the old Honeymooner kinescopes, because it might have been done in the kinescope version on another episode and then brought forward in
It,
the 39 that
it's
they did.
possible. And in fact, the kinescope, those are the ones the so-called lost episodes, are the ones where Alice was being played not by Audrey Meadows, but by Pert Kelton.
Yes.
So yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yes, it was a great story about Audrey Meadows when she went to audition. They wouldn't even let her audition because they thought that she was too classy. So she went the next day and she dressed up like a like a real dumpy, and they didn't woman or audition. They didn't even recognize her,
Right.
and she got
And
the
you know what
part.
Jackie's and you know what Jackie's comment was when he looked at the picture and when Audrey was in that particular setup.
Hmm.
He referred to her as a boy, what a dowdy broad she is. Now that's Jackie Gleason, folks. I didn't say that.
And Audrey Meadows, and her sister Jane Meadows. I mean, Audrey Meadows, the two of them, they were very good-looking women. They're very
Oh,
classy, and
absolutely. And that's
very,
why Jackie took one look at the regular pictures of Audrey Meadows and said she's much too pretty to play Alice. And so that's when I got back to Audrey Meadows. She said, "All right, if that's what he wants." And
and then and you know what? It was one of those magical moments of television
right,
where when you read about how these casts, when you read these old television shows, the histories of them, and how the casts got together, and how in a number of instances, um, the people that were chosen to play certain parts were not the original ones picked to
right,
play those parts,
right.
and yet for one reason or another, when you see the shows, the classic shows afterward, and then you say to yourself, how could you see anybody else in that part? You can't.
Right.
And it goes. It's testament to just how good the shows are and how good they're written when the actor or the actress becomes basically becomes the role. And I mean I can't see
And
I can't see Gail Gordon and B. Benaderet being Fred and
and
Ethel Mertz.
Fred
I
Ethel, yeah,
can't see it.
right.
So you know exactly.
And Joyce Randolph, who played Trixie in one of the so-called lost episodes. In fact, it wasn't even a lost episode. It was Cavalcade of Stars, the
Mhm.
variety show that was on the Dumont network, that carried the original Jackie Gleason show, variety
Right.
show. She did a very emotional, I would use the term emotional scene with Jackie, especially toward the end of the skit, and it was that stuck in Jackie Gleason's mind. So when they were looking for an actress to play Trixie, that's what he said. Let's get that one. Let's get Joyce Randolph to play that role. And you wouldn't think that Joyce Randolph was really that great an actress, but apparently she really brought out the emotion, and that was what Jackie Gleason remembered, and that's the rest is history. But when they went to color in the '60s, you said, well, why didn't they get rid of Joyce Randolph and Audrey Meadows? And the reason was, if you remember, those 1960s episodes were kind of like musicals. They had
Yes.
songs in those honeymooner skits.
Yes.
They had two famous Broadway play people writing the music and the lyrics, And so we need somebody to carry a tune. And apparently Audrey Meadows and uh, Joyce Randolph couldn't carry a tune, which is why they eventually got
Sheila
Jane Key,
McRae and Jane
Sheila
Keane.
McRae to fill in those roles.
Hmm. And also, they changed where they were filming because I think they were filming. Jackie Gleason worked out of Miami
Right.
as
The
opposed to
Miami Beach audience is the greatest
right.
audience.
Exactly. All right, give me my questions.
Your question. Interestingly, Mr. Briller gave me not only questions for today, but he also assumed that we were going to do a show yesterday. And so he gave a Saturday afternoon matinee Briller Jeopardy
Well, I
question.
have mine. I had one too. What was the highest rated show in the 1980s?
All right. Well, I'll give you the Saturday afternoon Briller question first. What are the only three Westerns to lead the yearly Nielsen ratings?
I will say Bonanza,
Right?
Gunsmoke.
Right?
So that's two. I'm trying to think. I mean, I there were a number of Western shows like Rawhide and um,
Rolling, rolling,
Rollin', Rawhide.
rolling.
Uh,
I'll tell you what,
Chuck
that wasn't one of
Connors, but I don't think that was. I don't think it was the Chuck
Michael.
Connors show.
That was not.
Um, all right, I'll settle. I'll be happy with the fact that I got 2 out of 3.
Well, the answer I assume was wagon train, although in the typing here, the chairman wrote wagon train.
Wagon Train, yes, it
Right,
was Wagon Train.
Wagon. It's kind of like that question in Trivial Pursuit on Seinfeld.
Mm-hmm.
Who were the conquerors of Spain in the 8th century? Oh, that's easy. It's the Moors. Oh no, it's the Moors.
All right, so
If you had said wagon train, I would have said, "Oh no, it's wagon train."
yes. All right, so what's the next one?
Okay. Category at the movies. Question one. In 1924, the first year you could see a movie in a theater, how much was a ticket?
I'm going to say a nickel.
How about 25 cents?
25? Okay.
Right.
They weren't
And
worth it wasn't worth more than a nickel, but go on.
right. What was the only X-rated movie to win? Now watch out here. It's an X-rated movie to win Best Picture.
Oh, that's got to be the Marlon Brando movie from the 70s, right? No, that didn't win Best Picture. Last Tango in Paris?
No,
No, it wasn't that one. A Clockwork Orange?
no.
And it was an X-rated movie and it won Best Picture?
Right. I'll give you a hint. It can also be a time of the day.
It also can be the time of a day.
The first it's a two-word movie, and the first word it could also be used for a time to describe a time of a day.
Hmm. Like high noon. But that
Well,
was
what's the opposite of noon?
midnight. Oh,
Right.
oh Jesus.
Midnight Jesus?
No, no, no. So it's on the tip of my tongue. Go ahead, give it to me. Let me have it.
Midnight Cowboy.
Midnight Cowboy was rated X?
That's what he said.
Really?
I didn't know that myself.
Hmm. I wonder why. Now I'm going to have to actually go look at it
All right.
because I've never seen Midnight Cowboy.
And the third and final question of the day and of the weekend, this last weekend of June, Joe, adjusted for inflation, what film sold the most movie tickets, adding up to 3.8 billion with a B dollars?
Would it be Gone with the Wind?
No,
Adjusted for inflation?
adjusted for inflation.
Can you give me a decade?
The 1990s.
Well, I mean, the blockbuster Titanic was in the late '90s,
And there you go.
and it was Titanic.
And there you are. Yeah.
No. Okay, that's it. And did you get the other one? What was the highest rated show of the 1980s? Should be an easy one.
Oh, the highest rated show in the 1980s.
80s.
Well, there were so many shows in the I don't know, Hill Street Blues.
The Cosby Show.
The Cosby Show. Yes. Okay.
All right, so let's. Yeah, I know Christina Pedia is hitting on the fact that I said midnight Jesus. There's a comma in there, folks. So it was like midnight Jesus. Since I was trying to figure out what best picture
Right.
has the word midnight in it. Uh, but like I said, I've never seen Midnight Cowboy. But now that I've known that it
David
was
Schwartz
supposed,
says originally rated X, Midnight Cowboy was later re-rated. Is that possible? It should have
yeah,
re-rated,
yeah, it's
re-rated
possible.
to an R.
There must have been some kind of sex scene in there that uh, they objected to that made it X. And Izzy D, if you got a question, go ahead and put it up. Sure, of course we take folks. We always take questions on the chat board. Sometimes we can see the questions and sometimes we can't. I have a tough time seeing it because I'm maneuvering stuff around. Joe usually has his eye on the chat board, so we'll try to pay closer attention. But yeah, put whatever questions you want up on there, and hopefully we can get to them.
I
Um,
will mention one thing in an astronomical vein, which may be of interest. And this came down last night from the Central Bureau for Astronomical Telegrams in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We may have in a couple of weeks, we may have a bright new comet to look at in our sky. This is a comet that was discovered by a spacecraft that's actually used to locate asteroids, which may make a perilous brush relative to the Earth. The acronym is NEOWISE. That's the name of the Comet NEOWISE. Originally, this thing looked like it wasn't going to amount to much of anything, but now it's becoming more and more uh, obvious that this may be a relatively bright comet. And again, by the middle of July, you may need to do is step outside after sunset, about an hour and a half after sunset, look to the western sky, and there hanging like a sword will be a bright comet with a bright head and a tail pointing straight up. This might be the best comet or the brightest comet since Hale Bopp in the late 1990s. And more to come on this as more details come dribbling out. But uh, you've heard it here first that we may have this may be in the middle part of July. So in a couple of weeks, we may have something really nice. Of course, by that time, we'll probably have a protracted spell of cloud cover, rain, and maybe even Sahara desert dust to obscure this. But something that we may look forward to in mid-July is this potential of a brand new bright comet.
David Schwartz says Midnight Cowboy was rated X because of its depiction of prostitution and homosexuality, and then it changed back. They changed it back to an R 2 years later. They were a lot, they were certainly a lot more sensitive to to those ratings in those days than they are now. I mean, now that does anybody even pay any attention to what a movie's rated anymore?
No,
Yeah,
just like, and have you noticed on television, a lot of times now they put the TV rating, and sometimes they're so big in the upper left-hand corner, like PG or G or whatever it is, PG, and it's so big that sometimes, let's say, a key character in the TV show that you're attempting to watch, the rating box is over that person's head. It's so weird, so ridiculous.
Izzy D wants to know if are we able to get Lee Goldberg, Craig Allen, and Lonnie Quinn on as guests. God knows we've tried. Actually, Lee Goldberg did get back to me when I messaged him, and he didn't see the message for a couple of days. But he did get back to me and let me know that he missed the message, but that he would love to come on one day. Craig has not yet responded to such message. So, oh no, he did respond to me. I take that back. I'm sorry. He did respond to me because he was out at the baseball field, I think, with his son that night. So
Right.
I'm sure we'll be able to get him back. And of course, Lonnie is a very busy sort of person, so we're just still waiting. But
And also
as soon as
Joe
he
Hayden.
emerges from the barn, we hope to have him on. And one of the tough things is trying to sync all this stuff up, folks. We try to bring people. We try to bring people on, but they're working. They have jobs too, so it's always a little bit difficult to try to sync their schedules to our schedule. But we're going to keep trying. And also, it doesn't help that it's summertime and with all the COVID stuff going on. So, but be patient. Um, let's hope in the next few weeks we could probably figure something out. And I agree, Izzy's right. He said if there was ever a year that we would get snow in July, this would be the year, and it would
Right.
probably happen in Florida, considering considering just how upside down everything is at the moment. I think everybody is just at the point where we just want things to sort of settle down. So let's hope that we get there eventually. All right, so I guess we'll leave that for the day, Joe, and we'll be back tomorrow, 7 o'clock. Everybody keep an eye on the sky with regards to thunderstorms this afternoon. Stay safe, and we'll see you tomorrow at the regular time, 7 o'clock Eastern.
Right. I'll try not to be late.
Please do, or don't. Okay. Good. Have a great day, everybody.